8-year-old Isabella, a thin little girl with big brown eyes and tangled hair, stood nervously in the corner of the La Bella Vita restaurant, holding an old microphone that was almost bigger than her tiny hands. She wore a faded pink dress, the only nice outfit she owned, borrowed from the orphanage closet. Tonight, she was about to sing in front of strangers, hoping to raise a few coins to support St. Mary's Orphanage, the only home she had ever known. The restaurant was alive with chatter, clinking glasses, and the rich aroma of pasta and freshly baked bread. Marco, the kind restaurant owner, bent down to her level and whispered softly, "Don't be afraid, Isabella. Just sing from your heart, and they will listen." She nodded nervously. As the soft piano intro started, Isabella took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to sing the Italian classic, Con te partiro. The first note floated across the room, sweet and fragile, like a whisper of hope. Then, as her confidence grew, her voice became stronger, richer, and full of raw emotion. Conversation stopped. Forks froze mid-air. Every diner turned to watch the little girl with the angelic voice. Some smiled, others wiped away tears. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Isabella wasn't just singing, she was pouring out her soul, her longing for love, and her dream of belonging somewhere. Among the diners was a distinguished older man in his late 60s, Mr. Leonardo Rossi, a billionaire businessman. Dressed in an elegant navy suit, he paused mid-meal, mesmerized by the voice filling the air. Something about this little girl struck a deep chord in him, reminding him of his own lonely childhood growing up in an orphanage in Rome. When Isabella finished, the room erupted in applause, but she only managed a shy smile before bowing. Her small basket, placed near the stage, began to fill with coins and notes. Yet, her eyes held a sadness she couldn't hide. As she stepped off the stage, Rossi's gaze followed her. Something inside him whispered, this was no ordinary child. The performance was over, but Isabella's tiny heart was still pounding. She stepped outside into the cool night air, clutching her small basket of coins, her faded pink dress fluttering in the breeze. The applause from the restaurant still echoed in her ears, but instead of joy, she felt an ache inside. Singing always made her feel alive, yet when the music stopped, so did the little bit of happiness she had. She sat on the restaurant's stone steps, gazing up at the starry Roman sky, whispering to herself in Italian. "Mama. Papa, can you hear me? I sang for you tonight." Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Leonardo Rossi had followed her out. His polished shoes clicked softly against the cobblestones as he approached, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Piccola, come ti chiami?" "Little one, what's your name?" Isabella looked up, startled. Her big brown eyes met his. Cautious at first, then softening as she saw the warmth in his gaze. "Isabella," she whispered shyly. He knelt down to her level and asked gently. "Dove sono I tuoi genitori?" "Where are your parents?" Her tiny fingers tightened around the basket. I don't have any," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I live at St. Mary's Orphanage. I sing at restaurants sometimes, to help the sisters buy food for us." Rossi's chest tightened. Memories flooded back, the nights he had gone hungry as a boy, the longing for someone to love him, the pain of abandonment. He saw his younger self in her fragile little frame. Without another word, Rossi reached into his wallet and pulled out a $100 bill, placing it gently into her basket. "Never stop singing, bambina," he said softly, his Italian accent wrapping around the words like a lullaby. "You have a gift. And one day, the world will know your name." Isabella's lips curved into the tiniest smile, the first genuine one all night. As Rossi walked back to his car, he glanced over his shoulder one last time, his heart heavy yet strangely full. That night, he couldn't shake the feeling, fate had brought them together for a reason. The city lights of Rome glittered outside the tall glass windows of Leonardo Rossi's luxurious penthouse. The elegant apartment was silent, but Rossi's heart was anything but calm. He sat in a leather armchair, still wearing the same navy suit from earlier, a half-finished glass of wine resting untouched on the table. Isabella's voice echoed in his mind, pure, delicate, filled with longing and pain. Every note she sang had carved its way into his heart. For decades, Rossi had built an empire, hotels, vineyards, fashion brands. He had wealth beyond imagination, but inside, he was alone. He opened an old drawer and pulled out a faded black and white photograph, a picture of himself as a little boy, sitting on the steps of Santa Lucia orphanage, skinny and barefoot. Memories hit him like a storm, nights of hunger, crying himself to sleep, waiting endlessly for parents who never came. Isabella is me. He whispered to himself, his voice cracking. I know that pain. I know that emptiness. Rossi stood and walked toward the giant windows, staring down at the bustling streets below. The city was alive, full of laughter and families, but he had no one. Suddenly, an unfamiliar thought surfaced. What if I could change her life? What if I could give her what no one gave me? He sat at his desk and opened his laptop, searching St. Mary's Orphanage. As he scrolled through photos, his chest grew heavy, tiny beds crammed together, peeling walls, underfed children, and heartbreaking smiles hiding deep sadness. That was the moment Rossi made his decision. Tomorrow, he would visit the orphanage. Tomorrow, he would meet Isabella again. And tomorrow, he would begin the adoption process. But this wasn't just charity, it was something bigger. For years, Rossi had given money to hospitals, schools, and shelters, but none of it filled the emptiness inside him. Isabella's song had awakened something he thought he had lost forever, the need to love and be loved. He whispered softly to himself. Domani, tutto cambierà. Tomorrow, everything will change. And for the first time in years, Leonardo Rossi fell asleep with hope in his heart. The sun had barely risen when a sleek black Maserati rolled slowly through the narrow streets of Rome, stopping outside the gates of St. Mary's Orphanage. The morning air was cool and still, but inside Rossi's chest, his heart pounded like a drum. He stepped out of the car, holding a bouquet of white lilies in one hand and a few colorful gift bags in the other. For a man used to commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, this moment made him strangely nervous. The orphanage looked old and worn. Cracked paint on the walls, rusted swings in the yard, and tiny shoes lined neatly by the door. Children's laughter drifted faintly from inside. As Rossi walked up the steps, Sister Agnes, the head nun, greeted him warmly. Buongiorno, Signor Rossi. What an honor to have you here. He smiled faintly. I came, to meet the children. Inside, dozens of little faces peeked curiously from behind doorways, whispering and giggling. Rossi set the gifts on a table, and soon, the children gathered around excitedly. Dolls, books, chocolates, and toys spilled out of the bags, their little eyes lit up with pure joy. But amidst the laughter, Rossi's gaze searched the room, until he found her. Isabella sat quietly in a corner, clutching a small guitar with chipped paint. Her wide brown eyes met his, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. He knelt in front of her, holding out a soft teddy bear. Buongiorno, Principessa. Good morning, Princess. She hesitated, then whispered, You came back. Yes, Rossi said softly. I came, for you. Sister Agnes stepped forward, her voice low and gentle. Isabella has been here for 3 years, she explained. No one has ever chosen her. But she never loses hope. Rossi felt a lump in his throat. He reached out and gently held Isabella's tiny hand. Would you like to come home with me? He asked carefully. Isabella froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Home, she whispered. Rossi nodded, tears shining in his eyes. Yes, Piccola. You're home. In that single moment, Isabella's world changed forever. A week had passed since the adoption papers were signed, but for Isabella, it still felt like a dream she didn't want to wake up from. The massive Rossi estate stood like a palace on the outskirts of Rome, tall white pillars, sparkling fountains, and endless gardens filled with blooming roses. Inside, sunlight poured through the glass windows, bathing the grand living room in golden light. Isabella sat cross-legged on a velvet rug, holding a brand-new cherrywood guitar, a gift from Rossi. Her little fingers brushed over the strings gently, producing soft, sweet notes. From the doorway, Rossi watched silently, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, a proud smile tugging at his lips. For decades, his home had been filled with luxury but emptiness, and now, for the first time, it was filled with laughter and music. "Papa," Isabella called softly, using the word for the very first time. Rossi's heart skipped a beat. He walked over slowly, kneeling beside her. "Yes, Piccola." She smiled shyly, holding up the guitar. "Will you listen to me sing?" He nodded, his eyes already misty. "Always." Isabella closed her eyes and began to sing the same Italian song she had performed that night at the restaurant, Conte per Tiro. But this time, her voice was different. There was no loneliness, no ache, no longing. Instead, it carried hope, warmth, and love. Rossi listened, tears silently streaming down his cheeks. Each note wrapped around his heart, healing wounds he thought would never close. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. When the song ended, Rossi took her tiny hand in his and whispered, "From today, Isabella, you'll never be alone again. You are my daughter now, forever." Isabella threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tightly, her little heart pounding with happiness. Through the open windows, the gentle wind carried her song across the gardens, as if the universe itself was listening. A lonely orphan had found her home. A broken man had found his family. And together, they had found something priceless, love.